Hello, I'm Alex Davies of Wealth Club. Today I'm with Ellen Huff-Davies, founder of Apparito. Hello, Ellen.
Hi.
Hi. First off, can you just tell me about Apparito? What does it do?
Yeah, so Apparito is a company we've been developed about 4 years ago to change the patient's experience of taking part in a clinical trial. So essentially it's like a SaaS platform for capturing all the patient-generated data so that we can communicate the patient's symptoms, feelings, physical health in real time with their clinician and researcher.
So why did you set this company up?
So I've been working in drug development and clinical trials for 20 years before I founded Apparito, and through that sort of clinical, academic and regulatory experience, I got increasingly frustrated with two things. One, how unfriendly the clinical trial experience is for patients, and secondly, the fact that we weren't able to sort of capture meaningful patient data in a way that was innovative and in a way that was moving ahead with technology.
And why do you think it's such an opportunity?
So if we look at how much and how long it takes to develop a drug, it usually takes between 10 and 15 years to develop one new drug to get it to market. And that can mostly cost around $2 billion. So it's a huge investment in that regard. And particularly so now when we look at some of the innovative drugs that we're investing in, gene therapy, cell-based therapy, CAR-T, biologics. And then on the flip side, when you look at the clinical trial study designs, when you look at the choice of endpoints, we haven't innovated or changed at all in that space. So patients will still be expected to, use paper-based diaries or paper-based questionnaires to report how they're feeling. And so, we all want to see these amazing drugs get to market, have a huge benefit on patient lives. And this is a sort of exciting time to be part of that.
Ellen, can you tell me about your background? Why are you experienced to do this?
So I guess I've been in this space sort of over 20 years now. I was initially a children's nurse at Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is the largest paediatric hospital in Europe. And through that, I got involved in looking after children recruited into clinical trials. So for 6 years, I was looking after children in 20 different pharmaceutical-funded clinical trials and got first-hand experience of how difficult it is to generate the needed data. My PhD was specifically looking at developing new outcome measures for clinical trials. And then in 2007, I went to work as a regulator at the European Medicine Agency. So I worked as a regulator evaluating clinical trials for drugs for rare diseases and pediatrics, and continued to do that for 6 years. So I guess my clinical, academic and regulatory experience of the last 20 odd years means I've got a good insight to all the different challenges in the space.
And something totally separate, I understand you've rode the Atlantic.
It was sort of a slight detour from day-to-day career, if you like. But yes, in 2007, I spent 77 days rowing across the Atlantic and sort of got to understand what sort of grit and determination you're required to keep going at that time.
So let's talk about the business. Who are your customers?
So we're selling to pharmaceutical companies. We're targeting more the mid-sized ones. The really large sort of 5 pharma companies do tend to invest a lot in doing this in-house, whereas the mid-sized pharma companies, the biotech companies and the CROs are sort of outsourcing and partnering with providers like ourselves to deliver this. So we're sort of targeting in that time process of developing the clinical trial study design and getting our solution integrated into that clinical trial.
And how do you go about getting these customers?
So contracts we've won so far have been through sort of my personal network, word of mouth. We are seeing a bit of a halo effect now, so people have heard data presented in conferences or sort of other clinicians talking about it. And part of this investment round will be to invest in a business development sales team so that we can formalize that sales cycle a bit more.
So what would a typical contract look like? What How do you get it? How long is it for? And what actually will you do for that company?
Yeah, so in the initial phase, there's a bit of kind of consulting work where we look at what the clinical trial needs are, what the outcomes we want measured, and what we think the best solution will be. Once we've agreed on the clinical trial, then we need to do the deployment. So that's deploying the software to capture the right data. So it could be an integration of a wearable or an integration of a device using videos, voice, photos, text, and possibly a medication adherence support tool. And then that requires to be deployed in many languages in different jurisdictions. And so you have to consider all the regulatory and compliance work that's required. And we charge an upfront fee for that. And then after that, we charge a per patient per year license fee. And these studies tend to last for at least 2 years, and then sometimes roll out even longer.
How much of it's automated? So if there's a trial, lots of the things like blood pressure, whatever, is that all done automatically by your wearable device? And then does it involve the client, the individual, actually doing a lot of work themselves?
So from the patient experience point of view, we've worked really heavily with every patient group to make sure that the deployment is suitable for that patient cohort. So there actually isn't a one size fits all when it comes to patients. You need to measure different things, and you need to consider different skills and abilities in terms of dexterity, eyesight, tremor that can impact the way they work. So we consider really carefully the sort of fit for purpose aspects for those patients, and then it's a mix of passive data capture and sort of actual engagement from the patient's point of view too. But there's a lot of effort gone into the UX, so the patient experience, to make sure it's quite a patient-centric approach.
And is there much competition in what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're 4 years old now. We've certainly seen a change in sort of the space in the last 2 years. America is, certainly ahead in terms of the amount of investment and companies that's out there. One sort of outstanding company is called Science 37. They've had a very large investment round, and they are sort of really pushing this boundaries of remote, decentralized clinical trials. Close to home here in the UK, there are other companies. One that's just also closed an investment round is Umotif.
Do you come across the competition much when you're...
Yeah, we get invited to speak at conferences a lot, and whenever you go to speak at a conference, you will always be sort of there with other companies doing something sort of similar. So we sort of, we see them in conferences and presentations quite regularly.
And what would you say is unique about what you're offering? Why are you better?
So I think where we come from is we come from the sort of first-hand clinical experience. We're not a tech product, we're not a tech company per se, we're a tech-enabled company that's driven by patients' understanding and sort of regulatory clinical needs. And so I think that's where we've secured so many contracts so far and sort of got the traction that we have, because we really understand the clinical regulatory patient experience.
So how's the company been funded to date?
So far, we've closed one previous investment round of just over £800,000 with Development Bank of Wales and Bayer Pharmaceuticals as a sort of strategic ghost investor. And we've also generated over £400,000 in revenue and won some awards and things. So it's been a combination of one investment round, revenue and some awards.
And so there's you in the company. What about the rest of the team? Yeah,
so the tech is all led by Dr. Ian Radford. He did his PhD sort of close to 30 years ago now in machine learning and AI, well before AI became to be a trendy hot topic. And he's worked in finance and pharma for the last 26 odd years. And he's been sort of instrumental in developing and designing the product and looking at the way the data aggregation is sort of working. And he is based in Wrexham Technology Park with a tech team managing that side of things. And then the other sort of key colleague appointed recently is Cecile Olivier. So Cecile was also a regulator at the European Medicine Agency. We worked together for the time I was there. She's a biomedical engineer by background, but specialised in clinical trial designs, and has been working globally on sort of moving the needle in the way we do data generation for clinical clinical trial designs. And she is also based in Amsterdam and will be sort of leading on opening the Dutch office and getting our European footprint there.
Okay, and Bayer are involved in some way, aren't they? How does that work?
Yeah, so Bayer invested in us strategically through the sort of innovation program. So they selected 4 different companies, and for 3 months I moved to Berlin to work from their head office. The chief medical officer was sort of my mentor, and not only did they invest financially, but they were also sort of really investing in sort of mentoring, understanding procurement, and sort of some of the regulatory compliance aspects required to work in this space.
Okay. So how much are you raising for this raise?
So this round is going to be just under 1.3 million, seeking 1 million from Wealth Club. We've got commitment from the current investors for some part of it, and all that money will be towards sort of developing the management team and particularly the sales and business development side of things.
And what's the ambition for the business? Where do you want to take it?
I obviously want to make it a global company. I want to make it sort of at the forefront of innovative clinical trials, but a very patient-centric solution that means that patient recruitment, patient retention in these clinical trials is much higher and the patient experience is much better.
And as an investor, what sort of returns could I be expecting, and over what sort of period?
So we're forecasting sort of at year 5 that we'll have a sort of 8.6 million pre-tax profit, which means that from a sort of investor's point of view via Wealth Club, that we would be expecting on a multiple of sort of times 8, which is actually quite a conservative multiple in this space, that investors would get sort of 17 times return on their investment, and that's without EIS.
Okay, and sorry, over sort of what time?
5 years.
5 years,
So that's
right,
5
okay.
years.
So let's just look at the risk. We've talked about competition. What are the barriers to entry?
So this is a very highly regulated space, and so we have to be extremely cautious and careful that we are forever investing thoroughly in the regulation and in the compliance and the governance, which are a very fundamental part of the business. Other than that, we're aware cybersecurity and sort of cyber risks are there in terms of hacking and maintaining the product. There is a bit of barrier to entry in terms of new competitors can't sort of just launch the market without going all those regulatory aspects. I guess we're also quite a small team at the moment, so if we need to expand the team to broaden that depth, that we can also sort of deliver on these projects as they come through, and I guess just sort of constantly invest in the R&D to make sure that we're still offering a good innovative solution.
Okay. So to sum up, if I want to invest in an EIS this year, why should I put my money with you?
I think the really exciting thing about Apparito is, we're really combining profit with purpose. We're delivering something really meaningful to patients, a real instrumental, valuable aspect to sort of clinical trials, but actually it's also really financially a good space to be in and an exciting development space at the moment.
Okay, Ellen Hath, Apparito, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.